was perfect. And that's the stuff. That's things don't fall through the cracks. I do too. So I should look to Maria for when she says, go for it.
Yep. You heard it. Yep. Now we're good. Okay.
Are we ready?
Yep.
Okay, and it's 6:30. Okay, well, welcome everybody to the Thursday, August 15th, 2024 Webster Town Board Workshop. Actually, this is our first Thursday night of our new format, where we have the workshops scheduled at 6:30 p.m., followed by the regular town board meetings at 7:30 p.m. And that's our new format for the first and third Thursdays of the month going into the future. So at our workshop tonight, we have two agenda items. The first one is a presentation by Communications Director Bridget Harvey on the Strategic Communication Plan for the town of Webster. So I hand the time to Bridget.
Thank you. So earlier this year, I talked to you about two of the major efforts of the communications department as we get things rolling in this new department of the town. And the strategic communications plan is one of those. So I know Kim distributed the plan itself to you as well as this presentation. So I'd just love to take you through some of those highlights and allow you to ask any questions you may have about this. And as always, I'm also open to answering questions offline as well. So we'll start off with what a strategic communications plan is and why it's important for the town to have one. So our plan is an internal document that's really going to establish the priorities and the purpose of the communications department as it's being newly created. So it's those parameters that this department will hopefully operate on as it continues to develop through the years. It's also a document to guide our communication and public relations efforts in relation to our target audiences. So establishing what those target audiences are and how we can best reach those through the different channels and opportunities that we have. It also organizes our efforts and looks to create efficiency and effectiveness in sharing our information and news, and provides intention and sustainability. So it makes everything really have purpose that we're doing rather than just doing whatever we want to do and throwing and seeing what sticks. And it is also to foster accessibility while we are reaching our audiences. So some of the key components you'll see as you review the plan are identifying those purposes and priorities of the department itself. It's identifying our target audiences. It is setting up guidelines for our external and internal communications, identifying what our response to conflict should look like in an ideal situation, and guiding our media contact and public relations efforts through earned media opportunities. So who are our target audiences? Who are we looking to reach? Who are we currently reaching? So that's going to be our Webster residents, but on the flip side of that, it's potential residents who may be looking for a new place to live. It's our town employees, but it's also prospective town employees that we are looking to recruit. It's business owners and prospective business owners where we want to market our community as a really great place to come and show them that we're economically friendly and open to this growth. It's our local media, it's developers, contractors, and realtors. So some of the highlights you'll see throughout this is establishing key messaging and supporting facts. So what that means is establishing messaging points that are based on the needs of our community, and it's supported by our town actions. So supporting economic growth is a good example of a messaging point, and how we would support that is saying that we're working with businesses to create an environment that is open for them to flourish here. It's tailoring our approach to our audiences and to the messages being sent. So we all know we have the opportunity to use social media, to use our website, to use print media, but it's really using those to deliver information to our target audiences and really making sure we're getting the best return on investment for the vehicles that we're using. And it's encouraging internal collaboration and knowledge sharing. So that's where we're really looking at our internal communications, which will encourage not only knowledge transfer inside of our organization, but it also bolsters our communications efforts outside of our organization as we're looking to reach our community. We're looking to centralize our communications efforts, and what that really does is it breeds trustworthiness as we have consistency across the board. People know things are coming from the town. We have our consistent answers to questions as we approach the community. And then one of the things that's most important to me is making sure our constituent experiences are really data-driven. So we need to be regularly evaluating our success and failures and being honest with ourselves of what's working and what's reaching people and what's not, and looking to grow from there. So just some early accomplishments of our department, and you'll see some of this within the plan, and some of it lives outside of there. But this plan itself is something that we set to accomplish within this year, and we've done so. So we've done that using research and feedback and staff collaboration. So throughout this process, I've invited staff to several input sessions to garner their experiences and ask what their recommendations on where we should go and what feedback they have for how we can communicate with people. And that was very valuable in putting this plan together. And I was very impressed at how many folks within the town staff participated in that. And to do this, we also drafted our plan to outline our effective communications for audiences using research from other organizations' experiences, as well as what lives within our own organization. You'll also see that we have our updated model for town meeting AV. So we have fully implemented our user-friendly and portable system, which is quite a bit more cost-effective than what we've used in the past, and really is, I believe, the future of where meetings like this will go. But another important thing to highlight there is that we are cross-training a number of town staff members. So you'll see, not to put her on the spot, that Maria is here with me today. She has stepped up to be a cross-trained employee of the town. And what that really does is it provides for us to not have any gaps in case somebody is not available to come in, and we can continue to use the same model and not be halted with a less than favorable situation for some amount of time. I know that many of you received our new monthly e-newsletter. In our first month of having it out, our subscribership's already gone up 13.8%. We are, I believe, like 1,100 folks subscribe to that. We have a 69.1% open rate, which is compared to a 42% industry average within local government. And we have a 10.2% click rate and engagement rate on that email platform, which is compared to a 4% industry average. So really quite a bit above the government industry. And we've also implemented our social media plan, which has seen an 89% increase in reach, a 72% increase in average impressions, and a 247% increase in average interactions on our posts. So looking to the future, what's next? Website updates. You'll see that in the plan, but I've been working with our departments to simplify and to address some of the concerns that residents have had and other users have had about our website to make it more user-friendly and a more practical tool for everyone. As I mentioned earlier this year and earlier this evening, establishing a style guide which will breed consistency and make our branding look similar across the board and will really solidify our methods. Expanding our community outreach and looking for opportunities to engage with nonprofits, with businesses, and with our residents in a more robust way than we have been doing, and really make the organization immersive in the community. Establishing a crisis communications plan to react to crisis situations, to protect the reputation of the town, and really make sure that we're making smart and measured decisions in the event of a crisis or an emergency situation. And all of this will lead to much improved constituent relations across the board. So I know there's a lot there and even more within the plan, but if there are any initial questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I think this is great. My question is, you said there's 1,100 subscribers. Do you have a goal for how many subscribers you want by the end of the year?
It's 2,000.
And how will this information be used? Just want to make sure we're dispelling some of the myths of how this data might be used.
Are you talking about like a constituent relationship manager? Like a contact manager?
I'm talking about how people's email addresses are going to be used.
Oh, they'll be used to contact them about information from the town.
Very
So,
specific to the town.
yes,
And I just want to clarify that this won't be used for campaigns.
Absolutely
This is not
not.
a campaign database. And I just want to make sure that,
Well, can I speak to that?
yes,
Okay. Charlie, do you remember when I became supervisor 4+ years ago, and Steve Peace, our IT director, Karen Buck, who ran cable at the time, Pseudo Communications, and yourself, I said, Kim Doyle and myself, we want to build this database of email addresses. We get contacted by our citizens all the time. They submit for planning boards, zoning board. They call in for tree evaluations that are falling in places and all this. And we got all these people reaching out to us, but we're not garnering these email addresses where we could potentially utilize them to communicate to them things such as, hey, we're going to be doing chip seal on your road, in the next month, or whatever. And the big concern was, and of course I was new, so like this guy, he's probably crazy, whatever. I said, oh my goodness, there's going to be some privacy issues there, and there's going to be whatever. And I said, I got to tell you something, guys, and I appreciate that. I said, as you get to know me, I'm a measure twice, cut once person. We're going to make sure that this thing has policies and procedures that are locked down. And the last thing I would ever want something like this used for, and I'm going to call it nefarious, because if somebody is sitting in this seat and uses that database of 10,000 or 15,000 email addresses of our citizens as the incumbent for campaigning, that's evil. So the best thing we can do is put procedures and parameters around it to make sure that it never happens. Do you recall this conversation, Charlie?
Not as in much detail.
Oh, I do, all right? Because now 4+ years later, And I'm very, very, Catholic guilt, Bishop Kearney, you McQuaid, you know what I mean? I feel very strongly about this, the compass of right, so to speak. But the reason why we gotta lock that down with procedures and policies in the future, I can assure you, you don't have to worry about me doing it, not on my watch. I'm not gonna be supervisor forever. And I'm gonna leave the next supervisor with 15, 20,000 email addresses. That's a powerful tool if put in the hands of the wrong person.
Well, I think it's important to also call out, as every one of us has run a campaign or managed a campaign, is the data that we use for those campaigns comes from a completely different source.
As well it should.
And yes, as well it should,
Yes.
but that's why I wanted to call that out. It's very important. People should feel comfortable providing this information because they're a resident of the town. They want to communicate, get information from the town. And I just wanted to make sure that there was clear lines of delineation. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of great information here. And it's a good way to communicate events that the events go on the website. So it's more of a, I guess that would be a pull versus a push. You kind of have to know to look for the event as opposed to pushing out, hey, there's all these events that are happening in the community, which would be a great way to use the
Absolutely.
database.
Well, we're still, and I mean, now I'll step off my soapbox of the nefarious way to use it, and I think I know what source, Jennifer, that you're reading. I think it's a source that is probably not representative of the 45,000 citizens' feelings in the community, but I could be wrong.
Maybe not,
But,
but I think it's important to call that out.
I think you're making a very valid point, and it's nice to, to get that information out there.
Well, it's, as long as there's information in the source of that, I will say this, is that, it's not a question, Bridget, but because the news source of what Councilwoman Wright brought up, also from that source was that this monthly newsletter that was launched on August 1st, there was, you call it myths or dispelled rumors or however you put it, it had, if I remember correctly, Bridget, more hits, opens, and clicks to links in the first 3 days after it was launched than the weekly newsletter its predecessor had in May of 2023 for the aggregate 4 weeks of that newsletter.
So I actually have those numbers for you.
Please put them out there because
In August of 2023, the
23.
weekly newsletter, which was 4 newsletters, had 126 total views, compared to 1,198 views on our August monthly newsletter one weekend. And then in August 2023, our weekly newsletter, so that's the 4 newsletters, had a 14.3% open rate compared to our 69.1 open rate on the new monthly newsletter. And then in August 2023, our newsletter had a click rate of 1.8% versus the current click rate of 10.1%.
So I want to go to the last page that's up on the screen right now because it all spawns off of that. Is that I'm an old guy, so I'm not really, I don't practice this stuff. I'm not on TikTok and Instagram and all that stuff, but I got enough kids that, it's oozed into me how it works. So when you get an 89% reach in your social media lately, and 72% increase in average impressions, and 247% increase in average interactions, to me, if our previous reach out through whatever the posts were, and the content of the post is completely a different thing, okay? That's different. But if the post that the government is putting out is tantamount to a tree falling in the woods because nobody hears it, because nobody sees it, well, that's a worthless thing. So one of the things that I've been very happy that Bridget came in with her base of expertise and said, this is how we can increase people actually looking at our stuff. And job one, as we communicate with the citizens is will they look at our stuff? And I give the example all the time that when I owned my business, I think that one of the biggest mistakes that was made by our marketing and merchandising department when we did direct mail campaigns, and you spend a lot of money on direct mail campaigns, is they spend 95% of their time on how the letter inside the envelope looked. What does it say? How does it look? This and that. And they spend 5% of the time on the envelope. Not understanding that human beings spend 0.1 second when they get the mail looking at that envelope before they throw it out or they decide they're going to open it. And that's what the devil in the details of communications is something that I am really happy that we are starting to pay attention to. It's going to pay major dividends to this town. I've said it unapologetically that the one thing I hope when I'm kicked out of this job or if I get to leave on my own reconnaissance, it's important to me that the community feels that the brand of the town government of Webster is good. Because the reality is the people that I work with, these are good intentioned people. And I'll be the first to admit that it bothers me when things are thrown at the town government. We're an easy mark. Come on, blame it on the government. The government's got to be the problem, right? And sometimes they're very right. Well, I've asked our staff, here's what we can do. Let's do what we say and say what we do. If we can continually do that at every department, then citizens who are rational people are going to see that and experience that, and they'll start to think well of their town government. And it would be good to have them think well of the town government, genuinely feel well of town government, because then when they hear something that, hey, did you hear that there's going to be a Costco in town? Boy, that government is they're not transparent and they're slimy and this and that. You'd like to think they'd say, well, you know, geez, my experience with the town government has been that they're pretty upfront, pretty transparent, and pretty whatever. That's the goal. That's the goal of a business. That's a goal that should be in your personal life. I don't know about how you raised your kids, but one of the first things you say is, do as you say as you do. And rational people that you experience in your job and your life, they'll notice that, and they will gravitate toward it. We need to do that here within our internal communications and our external communications. I will get off my pontification soapbox.
I'm pretty high on it too, am I?
Thank you.
I just want to reassure people that we're not mining their personal information from wherever we can find it and adding it to our database. And along those lines, Bridget, maybe, people are watching and they haven't subscribed to it yet, but they'd like to. How do they do that?
They can do it in a number of ways. They can go to the communications page of the town's website, and there's an inline sign-up form there. We'll also be posting it regularly on our social media pages with a link to a sign-up sheet, or they can contact me directly through my email address or office number.
And both of those are found on the town website as well. Great, thank you.
Bridget, do you have a disclaimer, that we only use their email, for Pacific?
So, they have to subscribe to our e-newsletter. So, a number of people were imported after they had subscribed to the weekly newsletter, and those were transferred over. And then another caveat to that is there has to be an unsubscribe button, and if they opt to unsubscribe, we can't resubscribe them from there.
Yeah, we've experienced a lot of unsubscribe, and we've used the database of emails we have
Yeah.
to send out the chip seals that are being done, and at the bottom the disclaimer is if you want to unsubscribe, and some people
Certainly, and I mean, that happens for a number of reasons. People move, it's no longer of interest to them, and that's something we totally respect. It no longer works for them, and that's fine.
Bridget, can I ask you this, and I probably should know the answer. You gave a nice summary, 5 slides here. You also gave the town board a draft of a 25-page strategic communication.
Mm-hmm.
This is a draft, so this hasn't been presented out to the community yet, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Do you have an idea of when we would get to the point where the community would see the full 26-page
I would say if there are no major concerns from the board, we would move forward with this being effective, though I don't think it requires a vote or anything. It will just be posted to the town's
Right.
website.
Okay. I've already taken a lot of actions and help preaching this. I made some notes when you were going through this. I think it was on the fifth strategic target audiences, the Webster business owners and the prospective business owners. I know that you have already had a couple of meetings with Barry Howard at the Chamber of Commerce.
That's correct.
Okay, put in that effort. The next page, where you have, I'm just trying to think here. I put a note that, and I think I mentioned this last week, that we have an IT automation task force that has been formed. We were supposed to have our next meeting this week, but boy, several people had some issues that we had to reschedule to next week. But that is really going to be focused on how do we improve internal communication. And this happens in every organization. I mean, anybody watching this live or watching it on the tape, think about your own company you work for and how, geez, you know, I didn't know down the hall in accounting they're doing this, or we're down this hall in sales. It would have been nice to know that. Departments tend to sometimes in organizations be siloed, and when they're siloed, unfortunately, I think you look back after 2, 4, 6 months and say it would have been nice if they were on the same page on something. They could have done, saved some money for the board. So we've been addressing that in the last couple of years. I think we've made good headway on it. And then in the external communication, and what automation can help with that, Denise, I know that when we were vetting town clerk candidates and tax receivers, one of the things that came up is that we need to be realistic that if let's say it's 5,000 people come into town hall in a typical year for services, to pay their school taxes, town and county taxes, to get dog licenses, to get all the services that the town does. Realistically, in 10 years, the people that come into town hall will not accept that as an option for them, because they're grown up and they'll be in their 30s and 40s and have young kids, and they're like, I'm not taking time out of my day between 8:30 and 4:30 to go in for a service that should be on my phone and should be on. And so that's part of this committee, is that we need to start thinking like that. How do we get to that point? We love seeing people at town hall. We're not trying to chase them out, but you have to have that option for those services. So, I'm really interested to get going on that task force. So that's all I got on that.
Are there any other questions I can answer this evening?
No, I want to thank you on all the things that you've already done in the left-hand column of this page. And when I look at it, you've been very busy.
I have been busy, but I love doing this work.
We're grateful to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, we might want to think about changing from 6:30 workshops and 7:30 regular town board meetings to maybe 7 o'clock workshops, because, man, if we got an hour, that's going to basically motivate me to pontificate, Patty.
I was just gonna say, you can
Right?
fill that time really.
How about that? Huh? We got, like we said, we would tweak based on lessons learned from this new format. Mark that one down. Because we're starting 12 minutes late on the next presentation, but we have 33 minutes until the 7:30 town board meeting. So our next item, and second and last item tonight, is a presentation. I think that's going to be given by our patron, Rick Canali, from our sanitary sewer department, wastewater recovery, and also Paul Adams, our finance director. It's an update on the energy performance contract between the town of Webster and Navitas on the wastewater recovery plant upgrade. So I will hand the baton off to those gentlemen.
Thank you, Supervisor. You're absolutely right. So as we sort of trend towards our final amendment, we want to give you a project review of the thousands of hours that's really been spent to get us here. We'll go through a quick agenda. So it's project status. We're going to talk about the Energy Performance Contract Amendment 3 scope summary. Then we're going to discuss scope adjustments during construction, and we'll finish it with project financials. So project status. So we have been under construction for about 1 year. We have a lot of things going on at the facility. A few of you were down in the past week. Our construction dates are right on target. We'll be accepting septic and high-strength waste in July of 2025, which will drive some revenue. Will be a startup of the biosolids dryer in September of 2025. That would be an operational cost reduction. As you know, we spent a lot hauling cake. And also in September 2025, we'll be ready to accept waste flow from the Fair Lake facility, another large revenue generator for the town. The next page is you're going to see some construction photos, and actually these were taken earlier this week. On the right-hand side, you can see the footer for the dryer building. Looks like 2 railroad tracks. They're pouring that. You can see the large pump truck in blue and orange. You can see just past that the high-strength waste receiving building. And to the left of your screen, the 550-ton crane getting ready to begin erecting panels of our new digester. And that is a great picture of the crane. It's just an awesome sight. And Rick, how much weight was on the counter weights?
Over 400 tons.
So it took 14 semi-trucks to build that crane, and they did it in about 4 hours. So we're going to talk about the Energy Performance Contract Amendment 3 scope of work. This amendment will be focused on accepting waste flow from our industrial customer. So that includes our 4th aeration tank and upgraded aeration system. Give much better control to our chief line operator and team. The new anaerobic digester that we just saw. All facilities within the new dryer building, electrical, mechanical, HVAC, and everything associated with that, and all site work, final site work and utilities on the site. We did have some scope adjustments during construction, and we're going to talk about those a little bit.
Yeah, so a major portion of the scope expansion really are tied to the first 3 bullet points there, the high strength waste building, the trickling filter that required complete demolition, and the relocation of overhead electric utility lines. So this project, as we were moving along, was kind of actually wound up being a living, breathing document. It kind of, we were continuing to look at efficiencies and ways we can do things differently instead of when we looked at original design. So this high-strength waste organic building was going to be a huge revenue generation for us, but originally the building was designed to be part of the dryer building. And what we found out as we were doing the landscape of the waste that we're going to be accepting out there, concurrently we were looking at Project ISO too, and we didn't know who they were, if we were going to land that big fish, but we wound up getting them. But anyways, so as we looked at it, we were only going to be being able to accept a few trucks a day, or 1 at a time actually. So as we saw this, we decided to look at maybe separating that building out and pulling it away from that to allow more trucks in the day to increase revenue potential. But also open up traffic for our fertilizer that we'll be creating. So there's going to be a lot of traffic around there, so having the building separate was the ideal way to go. But concurrently with that, New York DEC decided to come out with, put their guidance out for water quality standards regarding to the emergency contaminants, the PFAS and PFOS. And our original design, we were looking at taking an outside cake from other facilities to utilize our dryer and be like their tipping or their landfill for them. And we'd create a tipping fee for us. But as we thought about that with the PFAS regulations and the low thresholds, we're like, well, we may be bringing the problem into our facility from an outside cape and would affect our Class A fertilizer. So we decided to be proactive and we did our own sampling to see where we were at, and we wound up being well below the threshold. So we said, you know what, as we're looking at this, maybe we shift away from taking outside biosolids and look at taking more organic waste. And Fairlife came to town, which had excess organic waste. So in turn, that increased the size of our digester. So we were going to look at taking more truckloads of Fairlife waste, other organic waste, fats, oil, and greases, and stuff like that. So when we did this, it shifted our building too. So that moved it right over to where the trickling filter was, which meant we had to do a full demolition of that and take it down instead of the original plan of just going below grade, correct?
Correct.
So also, the trickle effect is as we made the digester bigger to increase revenue potential and increase gas production, we noticed that our roadway around there was going to be a little tight and the electric lines were through there. So we decided to evaluate burying those electric lines. It opened up the roadway there, allowed us to also move tankage up there, which saved on piping and saved us money. There was savings there. But it built resiliency for our utilities down the road and not having lines overhead and they were underground. So that was a major portion of the scope expansion.
There was a administration building expansion, and like Rick had mentioned, this is a it is a design build, and once we got the plans and it was priced, we sat back and looked at it, and giving it more thought, the square footage just wasn't conducive to where the town needed to be now and into 30 years. So we enlarged really our training room, break room. That's where the majority of it was, a little bit bigger. To that point, we've actually worked with our suppliers and vendors who just ecstatic with it because they want to come in and do training there, not only for our staffs, but for surrounding staffs. The last one was the asbestos remediation. This was a hidden asbestos within the administration building that was only found after the walls were beginning to be demolished. So it was hidden vermiculite within the walls. To that point, we slide over to scope savings, which at this point is approximately $1.1 million. And this is really comprised of design credits, working with Noctis and their team, pulling back on some items where we can. There were some items that were in the scope, but we were able to purchase them directly off a state contract and gain quite a bit of a savings there. Winter construction savings. Dennis, I'm going to let you maybe elaborate on the winter construction.
Sure. When you're planning for construction in upstate New York, you have to plan on bad winters. And that may mean costs such as heating for concrete or extended work times or additional labor. But as we know, the winters have not been harsh here, so that's allowed us to actually have some savings in those areas, and it gives us the ability to return those back to the town. And we do that within our contract through what's called the client savings allowance. So whenever there are savings that are within our executed contract, those dollars are identified and then returned back to the town within the contract structure. And then if at the end of the project, those funds are not used for some other purpose by the town, a reductive change order is done to our contract, which reduces that overall price, and all those dollars are returned.
And then, and a little bit on the scope efficiency, which you touched on, and this is the scope efficiencies that really happens, not in one lump sum. It happens daily, it happens weekly, it happens monthly, it's ongoing with an outfit staff on site. Rick and I are looking at things as they're coming up, in our 2, 3, and 4 week look aheads and saying, okay, maybe we can adjust things, maybe we don't need that, right, because something else has changed. So it's just evolving, and we're always looking for scope efficiencies and scope savings.
On the financial side, we actually have some good news. When you take a look at the revenue impact, the septic and high strength organic waste We actually estimated this revenue number at 60% capacity. We think that it will produce about 1.1 million in 2026, and then 1.6 million thereafter. That's from the high-strength organic waste. And the septic side, once we get going in 2026, should be about 650,000 a year. With the addition of Fairlife, obviously that creates a tremendous amount of flow into the plant, and they will be charged 1 EDU for every 60,000 gallons that flow to the plant. So basically, that equates to, at a rate of $250, it equates to about $1.8 million per year. Also, there's the one-time connection fee. Based on the pipeline capacity of 12,000 EDUs, their fee for the one-time connection fee is $21,190,000. That's in accordance with the town code. We're striking a deal with Coca-Cola Fairlife to have that paid over 10 years. The first payment will take place in July of '25. So it's a huge impact. I mean, it's the equivalent of adding 12,000 houses to the town. So on the revenue side, I mean, when you total it all up, for 2025, we're at about 2.3 million in new revenue. Starting in 26, we're at about 4.4 million. On the operational cost savings side, biosolids disposal expenses is our sludge hauling. Currently, we have to take the solid waste, we have to have it hauled away to a landfill. It's very expensive. That's currently in the budget for 25 for $573,000. We're expecting this cost to come down substantially over the next few years. We think eventually we can get that down to about 70,000 a year. There is some energy savings based on the existing buildings of about 70,000 a year, but due to the new equipment we're adding on, such as the dryer, it actually ends up being about a net increase of about 30,000 a year for electricity. The industrial user increases, it does increase the overall treatment expense. Obviously, it's not free to treat the additional flow. We're estimating this to be about 650,000 per year. On the next page, we have the net project cost breakdown. The current authorized Navitas contract is just under 62 million. This particular amendment will be for about 23,300,000. It'll bring the Navitas contract up to about 85,327,000. And then we have a couple items that are outside the contract. The paving, all the roadways and the parking lots around the project will cost about 1.4 million. And then other project expenses of about 570,000. Brings the expected gross project cost up to 87,300,000. And as you know, we have received a $20 million grant from New York State EFC. Governor Hochul awarded this grant back in April. And proud to say that we actually received the first payment today.
Oh, wow.
Of, yes, $10,590,000. I got an email, I think it was early this afternoon, and I thought the payment was going to come in tomorrow. 2 hours later, we had the money. They wired it right in.
Remarkable.
So we're halfway home on the grant, which is good. Which is good.
Paul, have you ever seen an incoming wire for $10.6 million in your investment there?
Yeah.
Have you? Oh, jeez. Bragger.
Earlier
I was
today,
expecting you to say no to that.
Okay, go ahead. Bob, it's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. So anyway, so the expected net cost of the project is $67,300,000. As you know, we bonded $81,500,000, so we won't have to borrow to that level. There's but in the upcoming amended bond resolution, the only number that's really changing is the maximum project cost, which is about $87,300,000. This as on the last page, the sewer rates are currently $296 per EDU. So the town is expecting future rates to stay relatively stable at or below the 2024 level. So basically, the town is able to complete an $87 million project with no effect on the rate in the immediate future, which is quite an accomplishment. Additional dollars will be budgeted in the future for the sewer capital reserve. In the 2025 budget, I have $540,000 earmarked. In future budgets, I put in about $500,000 in my long-term projection. So we know that we have to put money away for future projects, so we don't run into this
Situation we're in right now.
Also, we think that we budgeted revenues quite conservatively. As I mentioned, the sewer rent charged to Fairlight is based on 60% of their capacity, 7,300 EDU. So we think they'll probably go over that. So if so, that'll help build some appropriate fund balance which can be used in the future to stabilize the rate.
And also the 60% conservative on the outside waste receiving.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's an upside to that also.
We're very conservative on that side as well.
Any questions? If I could?
Sure.
When we're looking at the net project cost page, maybe if we could bring that up again. Perhaps you could elaborate on other project costs. What's included in that?
The biggest piece of other project costs is $260,000 that we had to pay to RG&E. I think they had to be relocating the lines and
That's correct, but we
Yeah.
did, as Rick had mentioned, we gained so many other efficiencies from that, but you're absolutely correct. Yes, savings.
it also includes payments to our bond counsel and our bond consultants to handle the bond anticipation notes and eventually the sewer bond.
So those would be
Few other
outside,
miscellaneous items.
outside of the non-test contract.
Right.
And I know that paving was originally included in the contract. What was the reason we pulled it out?
And that's a great question, so then do you want to start it and I'll sort of end it up, how we're going to
Sure.
take care of moving forward.
So as we were working through all the work necessary to finish the project, paving came up for discussion. And there's certain aspects of the project where us as the prime contractor, we need to have responsibility for ensuring all of the coordination is done and you end up with a well-functioning system. But paving is a relatively simple and straightforward piece of work. And so as we started to talk with the town, we were realizing that us managing that as part of the project, with us having costs associated, wasn't really providing very much value to the town. So we started having some conversations with Art and Rick about were there some other ways that work could be accomplished, either with the town procuring it directly with us providing some coordination support as part of the project, or were there some other ways that perhaps it could be done more cost effectively?
Yeah, that's exactly right, and this is a great example of, I had spoken earlier about, we're looking at efficiencies every day, and this is a great one. So we left this as a conservative number. We're working with our highway department to see if all or a portion of it they can help us complete. If not, we will work with our office and our engineer to create an RFP, and we'll send it out to bid, and we'll manage it in-house with a little bit of help from Novices. But we will keep trying to drive that number down.
Thank you. Yeah, we should make no mistake, it's still going to be a cost within the project, but we're looking at doing it more, as Dennis said, cost effectively and efficiently. Thank you.
So I have a couple questions on the $2.6 million price strength organic waste building. Because that was a pretty significant investment that I was unaware of until I met with you gentlemen the other day. And one of the questions that I forgot to ask you was, what was your projected return on investment of this $2.6 million
So if you want me to take that, so,
I'm just assuming you did the analysis before the building.
what I remember at the time when we were looking at the differences was related to how many trucks could come into the site, and by having the 2 lanes of traffic instead of the 1. And so one of the things that we know is that every single truck that comes through a day equals a little over $100,000 a year in revenue. So I'd have to go back, Mr. Cahill, and look at what we were looking at and the differences of the truck traffic capabilities from the first design to the second, in order for me to give you a good, accurate answer to that.
Yeah, I'm very interested in that.
And we'll add to that, is that we weren't projected to take in hardly any of Fairlife's DAF waste. They were gonna have to haul that away. So once we did this, that was a whole new added one that we weren't planning on. So there's a number of that too we did.
Sure. I'm not really familiar with municipal construction. I'm very familiar with private commercial construction. And usually we would approach the owners with some changes and something of this significant. We would approach the owners before this happened. It just seems it's a little different this way.
Can I add something, John, to that? 2 things. One, instead of the return on investment calculation being sent to Councilman Cahill, in 3 weeks, on September 5th, we'll be back here for what I think is going to be a public hearing and a process to approve, maybe, the project going to 87.3. Can we bring that to that meeting? Okay. I'd like to discuss that. Right?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
I think that's good, part of this. And 2, Patty and I have been in a lot of these meetings, so Patty, I can't say that we knew about this before 2 days ago. When you said you didn't know about it until 2 days ago.
Right.
And Jenny, you wouldn't have known about it, or Jennifer. I'm not sure, we've had this conversation before at the board.
Not to the 2.6 million.
Trying to think how to say this. The communication that I have tried to do as town supervisor to the town board members on all the things going on in town. It's an art more than a science. I'm very open to ways that I can be better on that in the future. In hindsight, I'm not sure when in the last couple months I would have gone to the town board members and said, hey, in layman terms, don't get married to the $81.5 million bond resolution that we did back in July of 2023, because that $81.5 million bond resolution that we did approximately 12.5 months ago, I want you to really think about this. That was 2.5 months after Project Izzo, as Rick Canale said, which turned out to be Coke Fairlife. Coke Fairlife told us on May 9th, 2023, in a big press release, we're coming to Webster. And it's not practical between May 9th and July 27th, 2.5 months, to be able to go and design all the nooks and crannies and details of a sewer plant that is now going to go from a volume at 3 million gallons a day on average to 5 million gallons a day. And so the best efforts of trying to estimate in late July, 2.5 months after Coke came to town, the reason why we had to do that bond resolution with the best estimate with the information we had in front of us at the time is the next day was the deadline to apply to New York State for 25% of the project in a WIA EFC grant. And 25% of around $80 million, I think, is $20 million. Now, who did we get the $20 million grant from at New York State? What agency, Paul?
We got an April from the governor,
Was that EFC?
EFC.
Yeah. So, there was a confluence of events that, you know, almost, and I'm just being honest with you, had us building the plane in the air. And I want to be fair to Rick and Art and Paul and to Navitas. I mean, as they approached us, Patty and I'm like, look, I'm not going to go out to the board members and start talking real numbers when you're telling me, well, we still got to look at this, and we still got to look at this, and we still got to look at this. There was way too many balls in the air on revenue production, on cost of various parts of the plant. In my opinion, it would have been premature for Patty and or I to go out to the other three board members and start that discussion, because it tantamount to serving the wine before it's time. However, like I said before, you know, communication is an art, not a science. And maybe, you know, we just learned something a couple of weeks ago on this board that I think we put into practice, that if there's certain things that Patty and I, as the liaison and supervisor, know about the police department, we learned something a couple weeks ago. If we think there might be something that could hit the news media, even if it's got the chance of hitting the news media, we should let the town board members know. And I never would have thought about that before. So I learned from that experience, and I'm going to put that into practice going forward. And maybe I'll learn from this experience. We'll have a discussion of, well, how can we, I don't know, what's the materiality of a project or something where it's like, you know what? You should let the town board members know in some fashion, whether it's executive session, whether it's in a weekly memo, whatever the fashion is. And I guess in this, it's a money thing, because if this was going up $100,000, whatever, but it wasn't $2.5 million bill. So somewhere in between there is probably the materiality of when we should communicate out to the board members. If Jen and I are working on the Parks and Rec department, since you're the liaison, something comes up that has that, whatever that materiality is, Jen, we look at each other and say, you know, we should let the other board members know about this. This is making its way up the pipe. So,
Well, the point I made
I'm very
at the
open
meeting
to
the
that
other day
conversation.
was that, you know, there's a sequence to events for a building being built. You're gonna have your drawings, and you're gonna work an estimate off the drawing. And just, you know, I would have liked to know this number prior to the building being built. Or we wanted to know, okay, what is the reason? What's your reasoning for doing this? Okay? And it's like I told you in the meeting, if I had that information, I may have agreed with it, but I would rather have had that information up front. And it's not like we're moving hallways and doors and just doing a $100,000 expansion. It's $2.6 million taxpayer money. That's pretty significant, in my opinion.
So, Councilman, I think we agreed with you in that meeting.
Yes, you did.
But I would like to clarify the context of what we're talking about, because it's being, I think people will hear it as a building. It is more than a building. It's an integral part of the process of that facility, of the 9 buildings. So I don't want people to get the impression it's a building. It's more than a building. It's pumping, it's
I agree
piping,
100%.
so, and all of that. So I just wanted to,
But I would like to have known.
we're definitely on the
Yeah,
same
no,
page.
and that, like I said,
Yeah, we're on the same
totally
page.
understand it.
Yeah,
And I will
yeah.
say this, the return on investment, I'd like to know it too. Okay, that's something that in all these meetings, I think we touched on it, because I know that one extra truck in the 100,000, I'd have to go back in my notes. There was, I mean, I got files that are this thick in this project. The interesting thing about this is, I mean, there's so many components to this. It's such a more complex facility than, for instance, the highway garage. The highway garage is a big pole barn. I hate to say it, but it's an 80,000 square foot pole barn. There's not a lot of complexity to it, not a lot of moving parts. It is the traditional municipal project, Wick's law, contingencies, all that stuff.
Right.
This thing is the farthest from that. This is like, it's unbelievable. Now, with that being said,
Contingencies for this as well.
this is not a Wick's law where we get low bids and then within the bids they put contingency. And I'm gonna let them answer that in a second, but I wanna make sure everybody understands something about it. On one of these pages, you put that our 2024 sewer rate is $296 for a homeowner. So when you look at your January county and town tax bill, as a real estate owner of a single-family home in the town of Webster, you're gonna see a line item for sewer, I think it's 2 of them, isn't it? O&M, operation and maintenance. and then it's capital. But the total of them is $296, correct, Paul?
That's correct, Al.
Okay. Last Thursday at our second town board workshop meeting, which probably went a lot smoother and efficient because Councilwoman and Deputy Supervisor Cataldi ran it in that verbose Flaherty. But I watched it, and Art and Rick presented their 2025 budget, and I think, Paul, you may have said it. The proposed EDU charge, O&M and capital for 2025 for Webster, town of Webster, not village, town of Webster, real estate owners, single-family home dwellers, is $253. That's $43 less than it is in 2024. During a year, 2025, where we're not maxing out on all this new revenue. During a year where we got to go into debt, something like $50 or $60 million to finish this thing. Is this correct, Paul?
Yeah, that's correct.
But the
It
combination
includes
of the $20 million
$4,500,000 in the capital reserve account.
and putting $500,000 future then, because we don't want future boards in 2060 to face what this board, and actually, you know, my predecessor, and Patty, and John, you were on those previous boards in 2017, that were faced with the fact that, oh, the sewer business is a very highly expensive infrastructure business. You have tens of millions of dollars of buildings and pipes and all that stuff and science and whatever. But it rots. And nobody in their right mind who is a private business owner would ever get into the sanitary sewer business. It's a dumb business. It really is. Because you'd have to spend $100 million on building a plant to basically get $6 million of gross revenue a year. There's no MBA program or business model in the world where that makes sense. Especially $100 million of capital on something that's not a one-time payment to build the plant. You know it's going to rot. Because you know what goes through that plant? So if you take the money annually from it and you don't reserve it like we are planning to do, then you leave future boards with an empty coffers with no money, and you got to rebuild the thing at whatever the dollars are in 2060, and you're going to put the town back into debt. I can't believe how good we are coming out. I mean, it is really serendipitous, all the things that fell into place. With Coke Fairlight coming to town, and the $20 million grant, and the one-time tie-in fee, and the revenues that were, produced through this being an energy performance contract, that is going to affect the sewer rates. And at the end of the day, I think the town taxpayer, you put us $60 million in debt, that's going to cost me $43 less next year. It's not intuitive. It doesn't make a lot of sense. How can we go into that kind of debt and have $43 less to each citizen or real estate owner, and in that budget be putting $500,000 a year into reserve?
Yeah.
I'd have to get a whiteboard to show you how it all works, but we just, Paul, you went over it with the revenues. You got 2.3 million more revenue in 25 and 4.4 million in 26. I want to make sure everybody understands something. That 4.4 million in 26, that's not because we do 100 million in revenue right now and we're going to make another 4 million. No, we do about 4 million in revenue right now. We are doubling the revenue. Doubling it. And when you double the revenue, and by the way, the other revenue, the 4 million that we have right now, we get that from the $296 we take from you, Charlie, at your house, and Jennifer at your house, and my house. 17,000 homeowners pay, essentially, $296 into the system to get us that 4 million revenue. Coke Fairlight comes to town. They're throwing in their revenue because they're equivalent to 12,000 houses almost. Then you throw in this septage revenue, which we haven't gotten any of that in the last 7 years. We used to. 2018, we got $200,000 a year in septage revenue. And the DEC came along and said, man, your plant is failing. And one of the first things you're going to have to do is stop taking in septage. You better just focus on the stuff that's coming in through the pipes. You can't be taking Chamberlain's septic stuff. So we lost $200,000 in revenue because we had a rotting, failing plant. $200,000 a year. And then, to make matters worse, Irish luck, at the same time, sludge hauling went up double, from $250,000 a year to $500,000. Because nobody wants to build a landfill for sewer sludge. This whole project was built around how do we not be beholden in years to come to the rates that will go up and up and up on the expense of sludge hauling. And that's where the drying came in and all that to get it down to pellets, that's fertilizer. Our sludge hauling should go down to almost nothing, right?
That's our hope. Yep.
And the septage, as Paul just said, which we haven't really gotten any money in years because of this new building, and I'm interested in the return on investment. Councilman Cahill's got a great question on that. But you said, I think, that we're gonna get $650,000 a year of septage in 2026, Paul.
That's right.
And that's based on a 60% analysis from when we had Waste Matters and whatever did the analysis of
Critical path.
critical path.
And there's also the high-strength waste revenue.
The organic waste acceptance is gonna be 1.1 million. Have we ever gotten revenue on that before?
No.
There's some things like petrol increases from restaurants is lumped in there too, so it's stuff that we want to go into the digestion after that. So that's figured into the high strength organic waste.
Let me ask the question a different way. In 2026, Paul said the revenue impact is $650,000 for septage and 1.1 million on organic waste acceptance. That's a total of 1.75 million in revenue. What are we getting in revenue today on those two components, septage and high-strength organic waste? Okay, thank you. That, I think everybody can do that math. Yeah, it has boggled my mind that I still, to tell you the truth, when I saw it, when you brought the budget, and said it's $253 a month O&M and capital. It's down $43 a month in 2025.
A year.
A year, I'm sorry. And we're also, that's putting 500 grand into reserve. And I said, well, that can't be. It's 2025. That's not possible. We haven't hit, we're still building the thing. We don't get the full year or whatever. I was doubting Thomas. I should have never doubted Paul. So we went in and looked at it and I said, I'll be darned. He's right.
And the main reasons are the increase in revenue and the grant from New York State.
Can I say something?
They've delayed the borrowing.
Can I say something? You included in the list of things that were serendipitous, the $20 million that we got from the state. And I just, we need to give credit where credit's due. There was nothing serendipitous about that. You went to bat for the town. You went to war for the town. It didn't look like we were going to get that grant. And you insisted and you talked with all the offices and all the people you possibly could and let them know that Fairlife was a wonderful thing coming to town. And everybody was all on board about rah, 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 Fairlife, but you made it very clear that we were not going to balance that project on the backs of the Webster taxpayers. And that this project, the sewer plant, was going to cost more because of them coming to town. They came to town because we could do it. And you certainly let everyone know how you felt about that. So getting that 20 million was not serendipitous, it was your hard work and your advocacy for the people of the town.
Patty, thank you, and Jen, but I'll tell you what, that was a team effort.
It was a team.
That was a team effort.
You drove that train.
Well, I was, you know what I
Sure,
did?
you did.
My role in that was, and this is why I'm not a good politician, I was the jerk. I was the one that went to
Played it
certain
well.
powers. Huh?
You played it well.
I did, you know what? I don't even think I have to act from talking to my kids. But I felt strongly that, we had done everything we said we were gonna do. We did as we said, and we said as we did. I think I said this earlier at my litigation. And I had told all those powers to be, we You are telling us we're gonna get our 20 million through the WIA grant through EFC. I'm taking you at your word. Apply for it on, at the end of July of 23. That's why we had to do the $81 million bond. That was too quick to do the bond. We didn't know what this thing was gonna cost 2.5 months after Coke comes to town. Yeah, it's, and honestly, it's kind of interesting. I've said it before, and then we're gonna finish this because we're starting the regular board meeting late. But this is a topic that there's a lot of meat on the bone. This is transformational, generational. Patty's been in a lot of meetings, Charlie has, Paul. I'm sure that when it comes to this Coke Fairlight, Paul was mentioning how the one-time tie-in fee from Coke Fairlight is 21.9 million, something like that.
190.
Yeah. You'll see it as we get into the next board meeting. There's resolution on there to authorize the supervisor to sign that one-time tie-in fee agreement. We tabled it on August 1st. We will be tabling it again tonight, so I'm gonna save you some time. But I got good news. We think, Charlie and Patty and Paul, that we have the final verbiage agreed on between the Coke Fairlife team and the town team on that one-time tie-in fee contract, and also on the conveyance pipe contract. We didn't want to vote on it tonight because we just found out this morning. That would have been shoehorning it in. It's $30 million in contracts. It deserves the next couple of weeks for the town board members to get it and review it and have questions. It deserves to have the community have it posted to the website and to social media platforms so they can read through it, so that when we get here on September 5th and we're voting on that everybody has seen it. But that one-time tie-in at 21.1 whatever million, Paul, did it surprise you when you looked back at our one-time tie-in fees since 2018? Over the last 7 years, 18 through 24, we've averaged about $98,000, about $105,000 a year in that revenue, right?
Right.
One-time revenue. Coke Fairlife is $21 million. And that is foundational to why this agreement to spread it out over 10 years was something the town board was willing to do. And it's something that when we were courting Izzo, as Rick said, they had asked us if they came to town, would they ever consider spreading the one-time tie-in fee over a period of years. And we said, yeah, I mean, it's got to make sense to the town. It's taken us a lot of attorney work, hasn't it, Charlie, to make it make sense for the town. But I'll let everybody else decide on that when you see that contract before next week. So, let me ask something. Can I just roll into the regular board meeting, gang? Or?
We gotta start a new feed just for record.
Okay. Well, that concludes, unless anybody else has a workshop.
I should have a question about the contingency fee, unless that can be discussed elsewhere.
That's a pretty quick answer.
Okay, sure, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
So Jennifer asked a question, wouldn't that, some of those items that we spoke of, wouldn't come out of a contingency, but they were out of scope.
So they were out of scope. The challenge that we had is that as we had talked earlier this week, that discrepancy is actually the comparison to the $81.5 million bond value. And so when we went back and looked at the budgets in that calculation of the 81.5, that separate building wasn't in that calculation. And so there was no money in that budget. There was no contingency there for it because it hadn't been part of the original
Right,
calculation.
that part I understand, but just like with a project that size, and Tom, you were talking about how quickly it had to come together, May 9th, July 27th. Like, with a project that big, is it not possible to have some sort of contingency fee overall, not for a specific line item?
Yes, it is possible to have a contingency to carry for those unknowns. It wasn't in the structure of the budgeting process that we were using with the town at the time.
Okay, I understand. Just, it's a big project, so to expect that it's gonna,
I mean, I don't know how deep you wanna go, there is a contingency.
There is.
You have the owner's allowance, which, you know, if we manage the project well with you, it's all our money.
Agreed.
The contingency, if you, I mean, obviously when we go to do the third amendment and all that, if we do it in a couple of weeks, I mean, it's all out there for everybody to see. I think the contingency has a 60-40 component to it.
I think Ms. Wright, what you're talking about is in that early process, why wasn't there money
yes,
in the budget at the time for an unknown like
Correct.
this? It could have been done that way, it just wasn't the structure that Navis and the town had been using in that budgeting process. What it would have done, so hypothetically, if we've done that, if we've had a $5 million contingency, then your bond resolution at that time would have been $86.5 million instead of $81.5 million at that resolution.
right, which would have, just in my opinion, it would be better to go to that well once versus going back to the well and adding $6 million, that's all.
You are 100% correct, and you wanna know something, Jennifer? In our meetings, what would have been ideal, and you'd have to go back to the whole, what Councilman Abbott and John, myself, Patty, was Barry Dean involved in that too? When we got educated on energy performance contracts, and really having to take off the hat of Wick's Law, traditional municipal, low bid, contingency, all that stuff. The energy performance, what would have been nice in a different universe if we could have signed an $81 million contract with Navitas back 13 months ago. Because then really any of these changes, inflationary and all that stuff, that would have been on them. The reason why it was impossible to sign that back then is because we did not know what the Coke Fairlight component was going to be. And if you go back to the history of this, we did the original Navitas contract to get the ball moving. And I want to say that was $40 million. We knew that these are things that we need to get moving now if we're going to meet timetables. We had supply chain issues of getting major things here. We needed to be under contract to order stuff that might not be here for a year. I think this was before your time, Jennifer.
It was,
And then we did a $20 million amendment. I don't even remember when that was. That was Amendment 1. November. I want to say the next amendment was like $1 million something and brought us up to the 61, whatever. And now this third amendment will be putting the ribbon around the whole contract. I don't know, you know, in hindsight, how we could have done it differently. You know, we never, I mean, I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I don't
well, you know,
I don't know how we
hindsight's
could have done it.
20/20, but I just asked a question because on a project that's $81 million, it's a big project.
Yeah.
So to think that you're gonna stay in that box, given a project that is that long, or that size, over that long of a period of time,
Yeah.
just intuitively, you might.
I
I don't think this is necessarily a contingency item. I'm speaking specifically about the acceptance, that building is more of a standalone, I would think, rather than, and it wasn't in the original scope either, right? Which is why it's not, that would be considered an add-on. Am I correct in that assumption?
You are.
Okay.
I think a piece of this also is what the supervisor said earlier, or somebody said, and I can't even remember at this point. Trying to project what this project was going to look like 2 months after Coke Fairlife said they were coming to town. That alone has changed this project tremendously. And some of these things would be impossible to know and put into the bond at that time because, as we said, we were building the plane as we were flying it. And we had started the project, we knew what we had to get done. And I actually think that working this across 3 amendments, while it looks like we're going to the well 3 times, it has actually worked out to our benefit to be able to do this in the smartest way. And clearly, although we're seeing the costs going up, we're also seeing the revenue going up. And I think it's allowed us to react to some of those things in a much smarter way, where if we had committed to a contract of, I don't know, $67 million, we would have had to figure out how to build that thing with $67 million, and there would have been things we'd had to leave out. So as difficult as this has been to keep going to these amendments, I'm happy to see that we are on our last one, right? This is gonna be it. But we've got a complete and very good project that will serve the town.
Okay, and I'm sure that this conversation will continue on to be even more robust in 3 weeks when we have a public hearing on it and all sorts of board conversations and get a chance to look at the return on investment of that standalone building, all that stuff. And I would invite the town board members over the next 3 weeks, if you wake up at 3 in the morning and say, "Ooh, I got a question that I don't know," shoot it at these guys, because it is a huge 81, 87 million, whatever dollar project. And when we've sat in these meetings, and Patty and Charlie and Rick, Art, Paul, I mean, when we're working on these contracts with Coke Fairlife, I'm like, we are not gonna lazy this thing. We are, the devil's in the details. This is a generational project in the dollar size it is. And we better make sure that the way we write it up and paper trail it and all that is not something that in 10 years, we're looking back and saying, ooh, you know, we made a mistake how we handled that. And I've been very pleased with what has been it's been a tough process. Wouldn't you say, Charlie, with the attorneys and the Coke team and the town team, and it's been tough. But I think that the town, I always felt like we were holding our ground on things that made sense to the town. We were representing the town. That's how I felt. I don't know about you.
No,
Yeah.
I thought you were very good at
I think the whole team was. I think Paul was right there with information, Rick and Art were right there with information, Jeff Storch from Harris Beach, who we helped on this, you, Charlie, Patty. It was a group effort. I like the end product. So, anyway, you gotta shut down the link. We are done with the workshop.